You will learn how to render a realistic three-dimensional cone in charcoal and learn to correctly see the order of all the value shades that make up the 3D form. Once you learn these skills, you will be able to apply them to any subject in any media. I'm Rosemarie Morelli, and welcome to my video art lesson. You can use any drawing paper to sketch out this project, but for best results in erasing and moving the charcoal around, I recommend a textured charcoal paper such as Strathmore or Canson. Soft and hard fine charcoal sticks, not the compressed, a kneaded eraser, and a sandpaper stick for sharpening. The first thing you need to figure out is, where are your darkest darks and lightest lights? This sequence of photos illustrates where those values are and how they relate in contrast difference to the adjacent midtones. It's also important to know the direction from where your light source is coming from. Here it is from the right, leaving the shadow on the left. Within that shadow area is an even darker dark, known as the core shadow. You will see this on any shape that curves away from the light. At the outermost left edge of the core shadow, light surrounding the object is reflected here, where you will render a slightly lighter shade, but not as light as the direct highlight on the right. This is called the reflective light within a shadow area. If you're a beginner, start with this quick exercise to get used to working in Vine charcoal. It's helpful to see all the values you can get out of your media. Create a gradation scale starting with the darkest dark and gradually apply less pressure as you pull across, drawing lighter until your charcoal lifts off the paper. Hold the charcoal at an angle shown, not like a pencil. In addition to erasing, your kneaded eraser works as a drawing tool for knocking out light shapes and blending edges more smoothly in the finishing stages. Knead the eraser to keep it clean and shape it into a point or wedge. This will help you render in a more painterly way and achieve those subtle value differences to give you better realism. Use a sandpaper stick to sharpen your charcoals when you're ready for precision drawing. Lay the charcoal at an almost lying down angle and slowly turn as you file into a long, sharp point. Be careful not to snap off the tip. This also makes it easier to achieve those subtle gradation values like the eraser. So when you use the eraser and the sharpened charcoal, you create a beautiful continuous tone. Here I'm using a hard charcoal, and I can get even more values. A nice sharp hard charcoal allows me to glaze over parts of the drawing that I may want to universally darken without losing any of the shapes. Okay, let's draw that cone. Always start a drawing in sharpened soft charcoal and draw with a light hand so that marks can be easily erased. To save time, I pre-drew the outside shape and am going over it darker for better viewing. You can see how I line up my charcoal with the angle of the cone to help match the angle where I draw. I'm also making the bottom arc of the ellipse a little more circular because in reality, when viewing, that's what it looked like. Photographs, as you can see that I'm working from, tend to flatten out the object too much, and it can also change the perspective. So it's always best to work from life. Once you have the outline of the cone, or any shape that you're working from, that line needs to be either part of the subject or part of the background. Here I'm losing my line and making it part of the background. This is the first step in creating the three-dimensional form so that the cone pops off the page. Now I'm going in and filling in all the dark shapes on the side of the shadow. So my cone is broken in two values, a light and a dark. Keep it simple and abstract at first. We're going to later on keep adding more values, and that's when the cone will become more three-dimensional. Here's the core shadow. Don't worry about exact shape for now and your values inside. Just put it in position. We're going to tweak these shapes later. Setting up the order of the values. Where are my darkest darks? Where are my lightest lights? That's the question you always want to ask yourself. There's a slight shadow on the far right, and I'm going to be lightening that up later. It's hard to control all the subtle shades using a soft charcoal, and that's where the hard charcoal will come in later. But we're going to back off some of that darkness with the kneaded eraser. Now I want to fill in more background and fill in all my shapes. I like to design all my dark and light shapes on the entire canvas or paper first, before going in and doing any finishing work. This allows me to see the whole light effect and if I like the design and arrangement. Now I'm cleaning up my lightest light with the kneaded eraser. Keep your eraser clean, knead it often, and reshape it back into the tool that you like, either a cone or a wedge, whatever works. Now I'm going to start putting in the subtle gradations of lights to darks, as I did in my gradation scale earlier on. That gradation scale exercise is something you should do every day. It's a fun doodle. You can do it while you're on the phone, while you're watching TV. Practicing will help you develop the good motor skills needed for mastering a continuous and smooth gradation. Now I'm just going over these shapes, pushing them darker. I'm taking creative license, and I'm not going to copy the background that I have in my photo. I'm just going to make it my own, nice and dark, so that cone pops off the page beautifully. It's always good not to slam in your darkest darks right away, as dark as they are. Start somewhere in the middle of your gradation scale. Always give yourself extra room to go darker later. Gradually work your way to darks and lights. My lightest lights I like to keep paper white. You notice I don't spend too much time in one place. I work the whole drawing. I keep working all around. A little bit here, a little bit there, and it'll all come together in a unified drawing. I don't let anything, no area fall behind. Now I've just brought in my exaggerated photo. I push my darks darker because that helps me see more of the contrast differences. And this is just for education purposes. You don't have to push your photos darker. I'm going around cleaning up, refining. Now that I like where all my shapes are. Don't want to do this too early on because you might want to move shapes and then you've put in all this effort for nothing. You have to redo it. None of us likes to do any more work than we have to, so keep your shapes big and simple from the very beginning as you move on. Once you like where everything is, go ahead and finish. Now I'm working my core shadow, making it a little darker, so that I have a larger range between my darkest dark and my lightest light, allowing me to be able to put in more midtones. Here's the hard charcoal. This is the French. Give it a good sharpening, razor sharp. A finely sharpened charcoal will give you the control needed to render more subtle values, enhancing the 3D form. Like a 4H pencil, I'm able to glaze over, fill in small gaps, and make precision refinements. So I'm also blending the value shades with each other, very gently, very subtly. And I'm also glazing over, which flattens out all those scratch marks. And this helps you get a more refined and beautiful shading for the three-dimensional realistic look. Now the eraser, that kneaded eraser, here it comes in as a blending tool. It's better than a smudge stick. Smudge sticks tends to grind the charcoal into your paper. You don't want to do that. Here I'm picking up charcoal out of the paper in a very subtle way so it looks like it's getting a nice blend. That's a wedge. Now I want to get it a real clean, so I am pressing hard here. White, clean, right down to the paper. Picks it right up. Learning to draw in charcoal like this will prepare you to be a better painter. I'll be having some oil painting videos coming soon so that you can see how I apply this method to oil paints to create good realism and create nice three-dimensional form in any subject, be it a portrait, still life, or even a landscape. Learning to draw well is your ticket to becoming a much better painter. If you want to get good, you need to practice drawing every day. Even if just sketching for 10 minutes, you can sketch anything you can find in your house. A teacup, the car keys, the cat. Just keep drawing. Now we're getting into the more polished, refined rendering of lights and darks. Here I'm showing you another gradation scale. This is what I can get out of the hard charcoal. And then I can back it off. Put it in, take it out. 2 steps forward, 1 back. And you'll gradually get there with a beautiful rendition. Now here I'm smearing with my finger. That's a no-no because you have oils in your finger. And if you're going to do a long charcoal piece that might take maybe 30 hours to do of a complicated still life, if you get too much oil in your paper, you're not going to be able to erase it well. So use only the charcoal or eraser to do your blending and gradating. Here's the reflective light that I'm putting in that we talked about earlier. That's that reflective light within a shadow side. Notice I don't take the coarse shadow all the way to the left edge of the cone. It stops short of that. This is light coming in from the other side. That is not the direct sunlight. And that wants to be toned down, which I'm going to graze over with the hard charcoal. So it is lighter than the coarse shadow, but not as light as the highlighted area. The highlighted area is what is paper white. Now I can see I want to push my coarse shadow even darker and richer. You'll also notice towards the bottom left of that cone is slightly lighter than the core shadow. So I'm going to be going in there in the end and erasing out very subtly, very slight. This is the put it in and take it out that I'm going to be talking about, and that's coming up in just a minute. I'm glazing over, pushing the darks. Now here we go. Make a nice point, almost like you're sharpening the eraser into a nice point. Just squeeze it in there. And I'm going to, that's a mahl stick. It holds my hand so I don't smear and get charcoal all over my hand. Gives me balance, keeps my hand steady. Now I'm very subtly lifting out some charcoal for that subtle light effect. Now one last glaze over just to pull it all together. The erasing and the charcoal unified. And there it is. I want to thank you for watching. I'll have more lessons coming soon for beginner and advanced artists. Till next time, keep drawing and painting. Ciao, ciao.